Imagine paying your family's bills for years, only to be told you were too embarrassing to show up. That's exactly what happened to me, and the day I stopped helping them, their perfect lives fell apart. My name is Ethan. I'm 32, and for most of my life, I thought if I kept my head down and did everything right, my family would finally see me as someone worth respecting. It's a strange realization that you can love people so fiercely you don't notice when they start quietly deciding you're disposable. I grew up in a small town outside Portland. My parents, Robert and Denise, were obsessed with appearances, who we were supposed to be and how people were supposed to see us. My sister, Claire, was their golden child. Bright, confident, always perfectly put together. At every family gathering, she was center stage while I hovered near the edges. I never resented her for it. Not really. I told myself she was just different, easier to love. And if I worked hard enough, I'd earn my place too. But you can only stay invisible for so long before you start to wonder if it's on purpose. I run a small design firm specializing in sustainable architecture. We've grown steadily these past few years, and even though I'm proud of what we've built, I never felt the need to brag. My parents always assumed I was just a freelancer, doodling floor plans in my pajamas. I never corrected them. I guess it made it easier for them to look past me. 2 years ago, I decided to surprise my mom for her birthday. Every year, I drove home to help set up balloons, streamers, her favorite lemon cake. It was the one day she always seemed genuinely happy to see me. So when I called to say I'd be arriving early, I didn't expect the long pause. Ethan, my dad finally said, maybe it's best if you don't come this year. I thought I'd misheard him. What? Why wouldn't I come? He exhaled, like he was rehearsing something he didn't want to say. Claire is bringing her new fiancé. He's accomplished. He's a regional director. We want everything to feel impressive. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. You mean you don't want me there because you're afraid I'll embarrass you? The silence was louder than any answer. My father cleared his throat. It's not personal, Ethan. You know how people talk. And then he hung up. I stood there in my kitchen, staring at my phone, feeling like the air had been sucked out of the room. It wasn't even anger at first. Just confusion, then a dull ache I didn't have a name for. I'd paid their bills for almost 2 years, electricity, water, internet, quietly, without ever bringing it up. Not for gratitude. Just because it felt like the right thing to do. But standing there alone, phone buzzing in my hand, all I could think was, if I'm such an embarrassment, why am I the one propping up their lives behind the scenes? It was the moment I realized love doesn't always mean respect. I opened my banking app and scrolled back through the transactions. Almost $9,000 spent so they could keep pretending everything was perfect. I never told anyone. Not even my closest friends. And for what? That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard his voice, it's not personal. It felt pretty damn personal. The next morning, I sat on the couch with my cold coffee and stared at the drizzle tapping the window. Something in me clicked over from grief to clarity. I picked up my phone and canceled every automatic payment. No rage. No dramatic text. Just a quiet decision to stop pouring myself into people who only cared when I was useful. For 3 weeks, there was nothing. No calls. No texts. No questions. Then, the day of my mother's birthday arrived. I knew the party was happening. Claire posted photos, her beaming beside her fiancé, a table piled with gifts, everyone smiling like nothing was wrong. Until the lights went out. At exactly 5 p.m., my phone started ringing. Mom first. Then Dad. Then Claire. I let every call go to voicemail, my heart weirdly calm. A text appeared. Ethan, the power just got cut off. Can you pay it immediately? I stared at it. No apology. No acknowledgement. Just a demand. A few minutes later. Water isn't working. Guests are here. Fix this now. And then Claire. The internet is down. You're making us look bad. Do something. That was the moment I knew they'd never see me as anything but a safety net. I set the phone on the coffee table and walked away. For the first time, I didn't feel like I owed them a response. I don't know how long I sat in the quiet. An hour maybe. Just breathing. When I finally picked up my phone again, there were more texts. More missed calls. But for the first time in my life, I felt free. I stayed sitting on my couch long after the last call stopped buzzing. Outside, the drizzle had turned to a cold, steady rain tapping against the window. For the first time in years, I felt still. Not happy. Not angry. Just still. When I finally picked up my phone, there were more messages. My mother's text stacked one after another. Ethan, the power has been shut off. We have guests here. We need you to pay this now. Don't do this to us. I kept reading, though every word felt like an echo of the same thing. You exist to solve our problems. Claire's messages were more pointed. You're being selfish. You're humiliating, Mom. I can't believe you'd act this way over something so petty. A few minutes later, the texts from relatives started rolling in. Most of them never called me unless they needed something. But now, they all had opinions. My uncle wrote, "You embarrassed your mother in front of everyone. Is this who you've become?" One of my cousins chimed in. "Claire was right about you. You've always been jealous. You should be ashamed." I read each one without replying. Not because I agreed, but because I was too tired to keep explaining myself to people who never wanted to understand. I was about to set my phone down when it lit up again, this time with a video call. It was Aunt Lauren. She was the only one who ever really saw me. When I was little, she was the one who'd slip me extra cookies when nobody was watching, who'd squeeze my hand under the dinner table when my father's temper flared. I almost didn't answer. But something in me wanted to see her face. I accepted the call. Her kitchen was behind her in the background, yellow tile and an old wooden table I could picture even with my eyes closed. She was standing near the counter, her hair pinned back, her expression worried. "Ethan," she said softly. "Are you okay?" It was the first time anyone had asked me that. I tried to swallow the tightness in my throat. "I'm fine," I lied. My voice sounded flat. She sighed and looked over her shoulder. The sounds of the party were still going on in the background, laughter, clinking glasses, the dull hum of small talk. "They don't understand," she said. "They never have." I didn't reply. Her eyes searched mine through the screen. "You're not paying the bills anymore, are you?" I hesitated, then shook my head. "No," I said finally. "I'm not." There was no judgment in her face. Only something like relief. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. Before I could respond, someone in the background called her name. Aunt Lauren glanced back and stepped aside, and that was when I saw him. Standing near the kitchen doorway, wearing a crisp navy suit, was Claire's fiancé. He looked different up close. Younger than I expected. Tense. And when his eyes met mine on the screen, something flickered there. Recognition. "Hey," he said slowly, voice uncertain. "Mr. Monroe." My stomach dropped. It took me a second to remember, Monroe Design Solutions. My firm. He joined 6 months earlier as a senior project lead. I'd signed his hiring paperwork myself. He took a step closer to the camera, and for a moment, the entire kitchen seemed to go silent. "Sorry, I didn't realize Claire was your sister," he said awkwardly. Behind him, I saw my parents freeze. My father's face went pale. My mother's mouth opened and closed like she was trying to find the right thing to say and failing. Nobody moved. I sat there, watching through the phone screen as all the people who had called me worthless started piecing together exactly who I was and what I'd built while they were busy dismissing me. Aunt Lauren looked between him and me, her eyebrows knitting together. "Ethan," she murmured, "do you want to say something?" I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I watched as my sister stepped into the frame, her arms crossed tight over her chest. Her fiancé turned to look at her. "You never mentioned," he said quietly, "that your brother was one of the co-founders." Claire's face flushed scarlet. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. And for the first time in my life, I felt like the invisible wall between me and the rest of my family had cracked, just enough for a little truth to slip through. For a moment, nobody spoke. The kitchen behind Aunt Lauren seemed frozen in place, like a paused movie where every face was stuck somewhere between confusion and horror. Claire's fiancé stood there, eyes flicking between my parents and me. My father was the first to recover, clearing his throat like he could somehow swallow the embarrassment. "Ethan," he began, voice strained, this isn't the time or place for." "For what?" I said quietly. My own voice surprised me. It didn't sound angry or triumphant. Just tired. "For the truth." My mother stepped forward, smoothing her hair with a trembling hand. "You could have told us," she said, her tone almost accusatory, as if my success was an insult to them. "You let us believe that I was nothing special." I finished for her. My throat felt raw, but I kept going. "That was easier for you. Easier to keep me small." Claire's fiancé shifted uncomfortably, glancing toward the door. "I'm sorry," he said again. "I didn't mean to cause whatever this is." He sounded so genuinely bewildered that for a moment, I almost pitied him. He hadn't signed up for this twisted little family theater. "It's not your fault," I told him. "You didn't do anything wrong." Claire finally found her voice. Her cheeks were blotchy red, her eyes glassy. "I didn't know you were going to be petty about this," she snapped. "If you'd just come to Mom's birthday like a normal person." I let out a soft laugh, shaking my head. "You uninvited me, Claire. You all did." Aunt Lauren looked between us, her face a map of worry and disappointment. "Enough," she said gently. "This isn't how family is supposed to act." Nobody argued with her, but nobody apologized either. Not my parents, not Claire. In that moment, the last piece of me that had been waiting, hoping, finally fell away. I looked at them through the screen and realized I didn't need anything from them anymore. Not acceptance. Not approval. Not love offered only when it was convenient. Ethan, my father said again, his voice pitched low in that careful tone he used when he thought he could still control me, we can talk about this later. Just take care of the bills so your mother isn't embarrassed. There it was. The final straw. Even now, faced with everything they'd hidden, they were only worried about how it looked. I met his gaze through the phone, and for the first time in my life, I didn't look away. No, I said. Simple. Steady. No more. My mother's lips parted in disbelief. What do you mean, no? I mean, I said, I'm done pretending I owe you something. Claire's fiancé cleared his throat softly, stepping back like he wanted to disappear. Behind him, the other guests were whispering, trying not to look like they were eavesdropping even though they absolutely were. Aunt Lauren's eyes glistened. You have every right to stand up for yourself, she said quietly. I felt something loosen in my chest. Maybe relief. Maybe the first glimmer of peace. I'm sorry, I told her. I wish you didn't have to watch this. You don't have to apologize to me, she whispered. I'm proud of you. I nodded once. And then, because there was nothing left to say, I ended the call. I sat there for a while, the phone heavy in my hand. I knew the messages would start again soon, accusations, guilt trips, maybe even threats to cut me out forever. But for the first time, I wasn't afraid of that. Because for once, I wasn't the one being cut out. I was the one walking away. It had been nearly a week since the night everything came apart. I'd spent most of that time in a quiet routine, working, drinking coffee that went cold before I remembered to sip it, and ignoring every call that lit up my phone. At first, I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd finally understood I was serious. But deep down, I knew better. That Friday afternoon, I came home from the office just as the last of the late autumn light was slipping behind the hills. I pulled into the driveway and sat there for a moment, the engine ticking in the hush. I knew before I even unlocked the door that something was off. There was a heaviness in the air, the way the house seemed to hold its breath. When I stepped onto the porch, I saw them. My parents, standing side by side with small suitcases at their feet. My mother looked exhausted, like she'd been crying all morning. My father's jaw was set in that stubborn line I remembered too well. For a moment, none of us spoke. The only sound was the wind rustling dead leaves across the porch. Then my father cleared his throat. Ethan, he said, we need to talk. I didn't move to let them in. I just waited. My mother shifted her bag and looked up at me with damp, hopeful eyes. We thought maybe it would be easier to have this conversation face to face. I didn't trust my voice not to crack, so I nodded once and stepped aside. They walked past me into the living room like they'd never left, as if nothing had happened. For a minute, I almost let myself believe that maybe this was their way of making amends. I should have known better. We sat down, me in the armchair by the window, them on the couch. My mother smoothed her skirt over her knees, her fingers trembling. We've been thinking, she began, and perhaps we did, overreact. We don't want any more tension in the family. I stayed silent. My father cleared his throat again, a nervous tick he had when he was about to ask for something. We're willing to put this behind us, he said. Family is family. But we do need some help moving forward. And there it was. Not an apology. Not really. Just the setup for another request. I felt something in me go hollow. My mother glanced at my father, then back at me. If you could just help us cover expenses for a little while, maybe $2,000 a month. It's not much for someone like you. The way she said it, like my success was something I owed them, made my hands go cold. I stared at them, trying to decide if they really believed this was reasonable, or if they simply didn't care how it looked anymore. I thought about all those years of quiet sacrifices. All the times I'd stepped aside so Claire could have the spotlight. All the bills I'd paid without ever expecting thanks. I thought about my father's voice on the phone telling me I'd embarrass them if I showed up. And now they were here, sitting on my couch, acting like that never happened. I took a slow breath. What about Claire? I asked finally. Is she going to help you with this? My mother's face flickered. She's been going through a difficult time since her breakup, she said carefully. She's not in a position to contribute. Of course. It was always Claire who needed protecting. And always me who was supposed to clean up the mess. I looked down at my hands, flexing them once before I spoke. If she agrees to send you $2,000 every month, I said quietly, then I'll match it. No more, no less. My father's nostrils flared. Ethan, this isn't about keeping score. No, I agreed. It's about fairness. The air in the room thickened. My mother's eyes darted to the floor. We didn't come here to argue, she murmured. I looked at her, my voice steady. Then maybe you shouldn't have come here at all. My father's hands clenched into fists on his knees. After everything we've done for you, he spat, you have the nerve to treat us like beggars. I didn't answer. Because for the first time, I wasn't going to argue. I was just going to stand my ground. The room felt smaller with every passing second. Like the walls were closing in around us, pressing me back into that old familiar place, silent, obedient, ashamed. But I wasn't that person anymore. My father was still glaring at me, his jaw tight enough to crack a tooth. "We raised you," he said, voice low and cold. "We gave you everything you have. And this is how you repay us." I studied him in the hush that followed. He looked so sure he was right, so convinced he had the moral high ground. My mother was dabbing her eyes with a tissue she pulled from her purse. As if her tears were proof that I was the villain here. I didn't look away when I finally spoke. "If you really believe that everything I've built belongs to you," I said softly, "then you were never proud of me. You were just keeping score." My father shot to his feet so fast the teacup rattled on the table. "You're ungrateful," he snapped. "You're selfish. You think a little money makes you better than your own blood." His voice was rising, filling the room with that same thunder that used to make me shrink as a child. But now it just sounded small. "I don't think I'm better," I told him calmly. "I think I'm done." His face went slack, like he couldn't quite process that answer. He opened his mouth to bark something else, but I raised a hand and stood. "I think you should leave," I said quietly. My mother's breath hitched. "Ethan." "No." It came out steady. Not cruel. Just final. She looked at me the way she used to when I disappointed her, a mixture of pity and scorn. I almost flinched under it. Almost. But not this time. My father's nostrils flared again, and for a moment, I thought he was going to shout. Instead, he bent to grab his suitcase, his movements jerky. "You'll regret this," he said hoarsely. "One day you'll wish you hadn't turned your back on your family." I didn't answer. I just watched as he yanked the door open and stepped out into the cold evening air. My mother followed more slowly, her shoulders slumped. At the threshold, she looked back at me one last time. "You're not the son I thought you were," she whispered. I met her gaze evenly. "I know," I said. And then I shut the door. The quiet afterward was enormous. I stood there, staring at the place where they'd been, feeling the old ache flicker in my chest. But it faded faster this time. I sat down in the armchair, letting the hush settle over me. No one was coming to demand anything else. No one was going to guilt me into giving more than I had left. For the first time in years, I felt something like relief. A few days later, my phone rang again, this time from a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it, but something made me swipe to answer. It was Claire's fiancé, Hudson. His voice was hesitant. "I just wanted to say, I'm sorry for how they treated you," he said. "I didn't know any of that when I came to the party." I listened in silence. "I've ended things with Claire," he added quietly. "I hope, someday, they understand what they lost." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just thanked him and hung up. Afterward, I sat by the window, watching the afternoon light move across the floor. It struck me then that sometimes, you can spend your whole life trying to be enough for people who've already decided you never will be. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is walk away. Words, 3,553.